So at the company's year-end meeting, the president drops a massive $50 million cash bonus right on the spot. The employees are practically crying tears of joy and immediately start lining up to toast their generous boss. But after a few heavy rounds, she is absolutely wasted. Right in front of everyone, her eyes suddenly lock onto our main character, Lin Fan, in the corner. Bai Susu lets out a loud hiccup and slurs out, "Lin Fan, get your ass over here." Her eyes are filled with pure venom, and the entire VIP room instantly goes dead silent. The coworkers go from being intensely jealous to straight up gloating over his impending doom. Lin Fan grips the resignation letter hidden in his pocket, stands up, and slowly walks over. She grabs a brand new, unopened bottle of high-proof vodka right off the table. Shoving it hard against his chest, she sneers, "Drink this, and those $500,000 on the table are yours." A violent wave of pain shoots through Lin Fan's stomach as his late-stage cancer tumor tears at his organs. But he doesn't take the bottle. Instead, he pulls out his crumpled resignation letter and places it down. He calmly tells her that he is quitting, causing the entire room to collectively gasp in shock. Bai Susu stares at the letter before violently slamming the heavy glass bottle onto the floor. Shards of glass fly everywhere, slicing deep into the back of his hand. As blood begins to drip, she snarls, "You think you can just quit? Who do you think you are?" She aggressively grabs his tie, dragging him right up to her face. She grits her teeth, reminding him that 3 years ago, he took $2 million from her dad and dumped her like trash. Now he thinks he can just walk away? Suddenly, a thick metallic taste of blood rushes up Lin Fan's throat. He bites his tongue hard, forcing himself to swallow the warm blood back down. Now here is the heartbreaking plot twist. Those $2 million actually saved her family business. He covered their massive financial deficit back then, and he definitely can't tell her the rest of the story. To get that cash, he took out loan sharks who ended up breaking 3 of his ribs. Leaving him with a ruined, broken body, he just stares back at her, his voice completely hollow. He simply tells her that the money is fully repaid, and his contract is finally up. Bai Susu lets go of him, disgustedly pulling out a wet wipe to clean herself. She slowly wipes down her fingers before pulling a document out of her luxury bag and throwing it. The papers smack him right in the face, scattering all over the floor. She scoffs. "Repaid?" Lin Fan, she laughs. "You signed a lifetime joint liability contract." As long as she says no, he belongs to her for the rest of his miserable life. Keeping his composure, Lin Fan kneels down and begins picking up the scattered papers one by one. His hands are shaking violently, not from anger, but from the sheer agonizing physical pain. Even heavy doses of painkillers can't stop his nerves from violently seizing up anymore. Honestly, she is being a total villain here, grinding her high heels right into his hand. Next month, she is getting married, and she wants him to stand there as her best man. His head snaps up in shock. She's getting married just to secure a massive land deal? To cover the company's remaining $50 million debt, she signed a joint agreement with their biggest rival. A flash of pure despair crosses her eyes, but she still stares daggers at him. She desperately wants to see him hurt, telling him that without this marriage, her family company goes bankrupt. She asks if this is what he always wanted, while he quietly looks down to hide his tears. He knows the rival's young master is a notorious psychopath. A violent beast who is partially paralyzed, meaning she is walking straight into a living hell. Marrying him is a death sentence, but Lin Fan has absolutely no right to interfere anymore. He gently touches the terminal cancer diagnosis in his pocket, with only 10 days left to live. Pulling his bruised hand away, he stands up and quietly wishes her a very happy marriage. Bai Susu sways, biting her lips so hard it's about to bleed. And then, boom, she loses it, grabs an ashtray, and hurls it right at him. Our boy Lin Fan doesn't even dodge. He takes the hit, split forehead, gushing blood instantly. Without a word, he walks out into the freezing winter night. The next day, he skips work entirely. He heads to the black market, literally signing away his own retinas. His kidneys, his corneas, his entire body, he signs it all away in a post-mortem sale. Combine that with 3 years of hard-saved salary from starving himself. And he barely scrapes together $50 million. He casually logs into an anonymous offshore account, transferring every single cent straight into Bai Susu's corporate account. Talk about ultimate sacrifice. After doing that, he collapses against the overpass railing, coughing up a mouthful of dark blood. His vision starts blurring. The brain cancer is finally crushing his optic nerves. He's going blind. Suddenly, his phone buzzes. It's Bai Susu's secretary calling. She demands Lin Fan get to the office immediately. He just wipes away the blood. He throws on a turtleneck to hide his bruised neck before rushing over to her company. Walking in, he sees her sitting there with a battered old silver ring on her desk. The exact ring he used to propose 3 years ago. Now she wants a wedding gift. She coldly points at the ring, calling it nothing but a piece of trash. She demands he smash it to pieces right in front of her as his wedding gift. Staring at it, his heart feels like it's being ripped to shreds. Honestly, this is so painful to watch. That ring was his late mother's only keepsake. Slowly, he walks over and picks it up. Bai Susu hands him a heavy iron hammer, her eyes completely bloodshot. She glares at him, betting he doesn't have the guts. He grips the hammer, but then his wrist suddenly twists. Instead of smashing it, he literally throws the silver ring into his mouth and swallows it. He forces it down his throat, the sharp edges tearing his esophagus wide open. The agonizing pain makes his whole body spasm as blood spills from his lips. Susu completely loses her mind, rushing over and grabbing him by the throat. She screams at him to spit it out, asking if he's completely insane. Right then, the office door is slammed open with a loud crash. The chief financial officer stumbles inside, his voice cracking from sheer panic. President Bai, $50 million just landed in our corporate account from an anonymous sender. What did the note say? Bai Susu demands, yelling at the top of her lungs. The officer looks at Lin Fan, whose mouth is covered in blood, and gulps. The note says, wedding gift for Bai Susu? Suddenly, she freezes in pure shock. Her eyes slowly shift back to Lin Fan's face, staring intently at his blood-stained collar. A heavy, suffocating silence drops over the entire room. Bai Susu stands frozen. Her hand on his throat starts shaking violently, her nails digging deep into his skin. Lin Fan, she whispers, her voice completely broken as tears finally stream down her face. They splash onto his hand as she desperately demands to know who sent the cash. Enduring the blinding pain in his chest, he slowly pries her fingers away, saying he doesn't know. Taking a step back, he puts some cold distance between them. He forces a mocking smile, suggesting maybe some rich coal baron sent it as her dowry. She snaps back, screaming that he's lying. She violently throws a file at him, crying that the sender's IP address traces right back to his neighborhood. Who else could it be but your trashy rental? Inside, he panics. He was careless. He forgot to hide his IP during the transfer, but there is no way he can admit it now. If he confesses, she will follow the trail straight back to the shady black market. She will find his medical files and realize he is literally dying. Talk about tragic. And that massive guilt would completely destroy her, trapping her in regret for the rest of her life. He casually wipes blood from his lip, asking if she thinks a bit too highly of him. His eyes turn completely ice cold as he sneers that a broke guy who sold her for $2 million could never get $50 million. What, did she think he sold his organs? Hearing the words selling organs makes Bai Susu's face go completely pale in an instant. She stares intensely at the faint bruises and needle marks peeking out under his high collar. Suddenly, she completely loses it and lunges forward, ripping his collar wide open. The fabric tears, exposing a terrifying cluster of dark needle marks across his chest and stomach. Along with the brutal black market brand, his secret is fully out. Now, this is actually crazy. The CFO is so terrified she covers her mouth and scrambles out of the room. She shuts the door behind her, leaving Bai Susu standing there frozen like a statue. Her hands hover in the air, trembling, not even daring to touch him. Shaking uncontrollably, she barely whispers, "What on earth is this?" Tears flood her eyes as she screams, "Lin Fan, what did you hide from me?" He just shrugs it off, saying it was just a quick side gig for cash. He quickly pulls his clothes back together, his face showing nothing but cold impatience. He coldly asks how else she thought he survived the last 3 years. President Bai.
Since the cash arrived, her forced marriage can be canceled, and his job as best man is officially over. He bids her goodbye, turns around, and takes giant steps toward the exit. With every step, his stomach feels like it is being carved by knives, but his hand finally touches the doorknob. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoes behind him, and he slowly turns his head. The once proud and completely untouchable CEO falls hard, her knees slamming onto the freezing marble floor. Kneeling on the hard floor, Bai Susu begs him through her heavy, broken sobs. She pleads with him not to leave, begging him for the truth so they can start over. She screams out that she does not want the company or anything else anymore. Seeing her completely broken on the floor genuinely tears his heart to shreds. This is low-key heartbreaking. He wants nothing more than to rush over, hold her tight, and say how much he loves her. To tell her he missed her like crazy every single day of those 3 years. But he only has 13 days left to live. He slowly closes his eyes. Taking a heavy breath, he forces himself to open them. But when he looks back, his eyes are filled with nothing but cold disgust. He walks back over and coldly tells Bai Susu to stop acting so disgusting. Looking down on her, his words slice straight through her heart. He sneers, asking if she honestly thought he swallowed that ring because he missed her? He just thought it was filthy, and looking at her makes him sick. It only reminds him of 3 years ago when he begged like a dog for her money. Now that he is rich, he has finally got enough cash to throw around for the rest of his life. He can finally be free of her for good, causing Bai Susu to snap her head up. She stares at him in sheer disbelief, crying out that he is lying. She shakes her head wildly, desperately reaching out to grab his leg. He violently pulls away and kicks the coffee table, sending it crashing to the floor. The shattering glass drowns out his heavy breathing as he warns her never to look for him again. Lin Fan tells her that just looking at her makes him sick, walking away without a single glance back. He opens the door and leaves without looking back, but the moment the elevator doors close, finally he collapses to his knees inside the elevator cab, coughing up massive mouthfuls of dark blood. His vision goes completely dark. He is blind now, but his hearing becomes incredibly sharp. Down the hallway, he can hear Bai Susu screaming and crying her eyes out. Lin Fan mutters a quiet apology to Susu, saying he owes her everything in this life. He promises to marry her purely in the next life before fumbling to press the first floor button. Stumbling out of the building by leaning against the walls, he finds heavy snow falling outside. Instead of going back to his rental, he stumbles blindly toward the southern coastline. The black market collectors are waiting for him. Honestly, guys, this is low-key heartbreaking. The freezing sea breeze feels like a rusty saw blade cutting into his face. A thick black mist blocks his sight as the aggressive brain tumor completely takes over. The pressure on his optic nerve has finally reached its absolute limit, leaving him with only his hearing. He can hear the waves crashing against the rocks and smell the salty sea air. That sound mixes with the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth, making every single breath feel like torture. He is just waiting now, waiting for the medical transport that will carry him to his death. That is the black market rule. Once you take their cash, your life belongs to them. His broken body is about to be tossed onto an experimental lab table. They are going to exploit him to his very last breath as the snow falls heavier. Falling snow melts on his eyelashes while the tumor inside him tears through his organs like a pack of beasts. He bites his lip raw to keep from screaming from the agonizing pain inside. His hands grip the freezing rocks by the water so hard that his fingernails split and bleed. The pain cuts deep, but wait, 2 completely different engine rumbles echo in the distance. One engine is heavy and sluggish, barely holding together. It sounds like a struggling diesel engine from the black market medical van, but the other motor is screaming with desperation. Suddenly, tires screech and slide wildly out of control across the slick, snow-covered road. Cutting through the storm, the screech of brakes is absolutely deafening. A heavy crash echoes as the vehicle slams straight into the guardrail less than 10 meters away. The door is kicked open, and the sound of high heels crunches desperately in the snow. As hurried footsteps crunch in the snow, Bai Susu screams out Lin Fan's name with a cracking, desperate voice.
Her voice cuts through the wind, making his heart squeeze with absolute dread. A painful spasm tears through his body as he wonders how she even found him. She shouldn't be here. He forces down the warm blood rising in his throat. Lin Fan forces himself to stand straight, shoving his hands deep into his coat pockets. He tries to hide his violent shivering just before her familiar cedar perfume scent suddenly crashes into him. She throws herself into his arms, her hands freezing cold. Her trembling hands grip his arms so tightly that her nails dig into his skin. She begs him not to go and to just come back home with her. Bai Susu is sobbing uncontrollably, her voice shaking violently with absolute desperation. She tries to drag him toward her car with all of her remaining strength. But Lin Fan ignores the pain and coldly shoves her away, telling her to let go. She stumbles and falls hard into the snow, screaming that she won't let go. She crawls right back and clings to his leg, crying that she went to his rental. She tracked down his location, and now she knows the devastating truth. She slams a thick stack of medical records right against his chest. The papers rustle loudly in the freezing wind. That 50 million was actually from him signing away his organs, along with these loan shark receipts. Bai Susu is crying her eyes out, her boiling tears hitting his hand. Turns out the 2 million he took 3 years ago was to save her dad. He patched her family's debt, but ended up targeted by brutal loan sharks. They broke 3 of his ribs in that freezing, run-down shack with no heating. The floor was covered in bloody towels and empty boxes of heavy painkillers. She clutches his coat, sobbing like a child who just lost everything. That hidden iron box. It is packed with movie stubs and trash she threw away years ago. He kept them like absolute treasures, yet he claims he is over her. Then there is the medicine, which doctors prescribe only for late-stage cancer. These extreme painkillers cause organ failure if you take too many. He had 3 whole boxes stashed away. Why did Lin Fan lie to her? Why did he carry this alone, staring blankly into the empty void? His chest feels packed with shattered glass, shredding his lungs with every breath. Honestly, this is low-key heartbreaking. He just wants to hold her one last time. To wipe away her tears and tell her how deeply he loves her. But he cannot do that if she learns the devastating truth now. She will live trapped in endless guilt and agony for the rest of her life. It will break her. Hate is easier to survive on than love. And then she mentions the ring. Bai Susu's voice is trembling violently now, laced with absolute terror. She asks how he can claim he doesn't love her while throwing his life away.
She shoves a crumpled paper into his hand. It is a late-stage stomach cancer diagnosis.
And a severe brain tumor. She begs him to tell her it is a lie. This must be fake, right? She is desperately trying to deny reality. At this point, she actually dug up the diagnosis report from under his bed. Her hands shake uncontrollably. Suddenly, a cold, robotic voice interrupts them. It is the medical transport driver, bluntly stating that time is up. The boss does not like waiting. Lin Fan responds with total indifference. He looks down toward the direction of her heartbreaking sobs. His lips curl into a cool sneer as he asks if she watches too many dramas. Moving purely on instinct, his fingers grab the edge of the medical report. Rip. That harsh sound of tearing paper echoes sharply in the freezing wind. She screams and lunges at him, but he coldly steps aside to dodge her. He keeps tearing the paper apart until the diagnosis is reduced to shreds. He tosses the scraps into the air, letting them mix with the falling snow. The pieces fall onto her hair and shoulders. This man is built different. He actually claims he faked it all for sympathy. Staring down coldly at her, he acts like it was all a game. In the most brutal tone possible, he tells her the loan shark receipts were fake too. He claims he just wanted her to feel guilty and indebted to him forever. Bai Susu freezes on the spot, her crying instantly cutting off in shock. He takes a step forward and tells her she is incredibly stupid. Whispering in her ear, he asks if she really thought she was worth 50 million. He claims he was just bored and wanted an excuse to leave. As for those old movie tickets, mocking her, he says they were blackmail material for her dad. Now he is taking that dirty money to go live his best life abroad. Telling her that her crying face is disgusting, he insults her.
Honestly, this part is low-key heartbreaking. He leans in and whispers. Swallowing it was because he hated that she touched it, preferring to destroy it. Boom! A brutal slap lands on his face. The hit spins his head to the side, leaving his ears ringing. His teeth cut his mouth, and thick blood fills his throat. Then he just smirks.
If she is done, he tells her to go get married and stop ruining his payday.
Turning around, he fumbles his way toward the medical van. Every step makes his stomach pain worse, and the intense pressure ruins his balance. But he forces himself to walk perfectly straight as Lin Fan and Bai Susu scream in despair behind him. Suddenly, she lunges forward to hug his waist, begging him to just look at her.
She demands to know why he avoids her eyes, making his heart skip a beat. To keep his blindness a secret, he has to pry her fingers off.
Prying her fingers open one by one, her nails digging in.
They scratch his hand, leaving bloody marks as he sneers at her pathetic face.
Shoving her away, he tells her she is too painful to even look at.
The driver coldly tells him to hurry up as he fumbles for the frozen door handle.
A sharp smell of disinfectant fills the van as he steps inside. But right then,
the blood he has been holding back finally pours out of his mouth. It splatters onto the white snow before he slams the door shut. The heavy slam cuts off the freezing wind and silences Bai Susu's desperate cries. Collapsing back on the seat, he gasps heavily as blood stains his chest. The driver hits the gas and the van struggles to turn around in the deep snow. They drive off into the dark, leaving a stunned Bai Susu standing frozen. The wind blows the fresh snow away, and she looks down. Suddenly, her eyes widen. A trail of deep footprints is left behind, and every single one,
thick, dark blood is pooling. Talk about a devastating reveal.
A soul-crushing scream of pure agony escapes her lips, piercing right through the freezing sky. Inside the van, the loud rumble of the engine echoes through the thin metal. The tires crunch through the snow as the whole car shakes. This constant vibration rattles his entire body, becoming the final straw for his failing health. Suddenly, his throat violently spasms, and that heavy silver ring he swallowed gets stuck tightly inside his throat, those razor-sharp metal edges digging in, slicing right through his throat with every single bump, sending blood into his mouth. In a panic, he desperately covers his mouth, trying to force the blood back down. It is completely useless. Blood drips down onto his dark wool coat, staining it red. Gasping for air, his chest heaves violently. Every single breath feels like his chest is tearing open. A mouthful of burning blood suddenly sprays out, splattering all over the pitch-black car window. The warm blood begins winding its way down the freezing cold glass. Lin Fan's vision has already plunged into a thick, pitch-black darkness. His blind eyes can't even see the blood on the glass. But then, a desperate, broken shriek pierces the freezing air. She is screaming his name in pure agony. It's like her heart is being ripped open piece by piece. She is running wildly through the deep snow, her frantic footsteps drawing closer. She's chasing the car, desperately screaming for them to stop. Her high heels slip on the icy road, making a harsh, scraping sound. Then comes the heavy thud of her crashing to the ground, but she doesn't stop. She scrambles back up, desperately lunging forward through the freezing snow. Her warm body slams against the hood. The driver brakes. The massive force of the sudden stop throws him violently forward before slamming him back into his seat. The tumor in his stomach feels like it's bursting, leaving him curled up and shaking in agony. Cold sweat completely soaks his clothes, and in his trembling palm, he's clutching the legally active body donation agreement that he signed in secret. The edges of the paper are completely soaked in sweat and blood, crumpled and ruined. This is the final lifeline he's leaving her. Suddenly, the car window rattles from violent pounding. Bai Susu frantically beats on the window, screaming at the top of her lungs for him to come down. Her voice is completely hoarse now, breaking with heavy, desperate sobs. Her desperate voice cuts right through the wind, crying out that she saw the blood. "You threw up blood, didn't you? Why are you still lying to me?" She screams that he lied about everything, but Lin Fan just closes his eyes. Separated by a thin pane of glass, her weeping feels like a rusty knife. This angst is devastating.
It is slowly carving into his heart, making every single breath feel like an impossible luxury. She begs him to open the door, pounding her fists wildly against the window. He can hear her skin splitting from the impact, leaving fresh smears of blood on the glass. The sound of breaking bone mixes with the wet splatters of blood on the window. A sharp scent of blood fills the air as she screams she won't get married anymore. She doesn't want the company, she just wants him back. She promises to spend every single penny to cure him, begging him not to leave her all alone. She collapses against the freezing glass, sobbing hysterically as the driver turns around. He asks coldly if he should just drive forward and run her over. These black market drivers don't care about lives, but Lin Fan just swallows his own blood. Swallowing the blood in his throat, he forces himself to sit upright, whispering a weak refusal. Fumbling in the pitch-black car, he slowly lowers the window just enough to leave a tiny, narrow gap. Freezing wind and snow instantly rush inside, chilling him to the bone. And carried on that freezing wind, he catches the familiar scent of her cedar perfume. Bai Susu instantly jams her freezing fingers into the narrow gap, gripping the edge of the glass desperately. Her nails rip back, dripping blood. She begs him to come out, desperately trying to peer through the dark glass. But he purposely hides his face deep in the shadows of the carriage, staying away. He can't let her see him like this, covered in blood and completely broken. He absolutely cannot let her know that his eyes have gone completely blind, his hands trembling as he reaches inside. Right there in his pocket, resting against his heart, is a cheap, simple necktie. She bought it for his birthday 3 years ago using the very first paycheck she ever saved. This dark blue striped tie, Susu bought it for Ping Fan at some cheap night market stall. It was totally low quality. The loose threads were not even trimmed, but Ping Fan treated it like his most precious treasure for 3 whole years. Through countless agonizing nights of rolling on the floor in absolute pain, he bit down on this exact tie to survive. By now, it was completely covered in his sweat, tears, and even the blood he coughed up. Ping Fan slowly pulls the tie out, the rough fabric scratching against his fingertips. It sends a sharp sting straight to his heart. He silently whispers, "Susu, I am so sorry." He grits his teeth. "I can only walk with you this far." Gathering every last bit of strength in his failing body, he reaches for the open car window. He throws the tie right out. That cheap dark blue fabric sails into the cold air. It cuts a desperate arc through the freezing wind before falling weakly into the filthy, muddy snow. Instantly ruined, stained with black mud and his own blood. Outside, the crying stops instantly. Bai Susu completely freezes. This is low-key heartbreaking to watch. He stares blankly at the tie in the snow, the very tie he once stood on tiptoe to give. It was the first gift Susu ever lovingly tied on Ping Fan, but now Ping Fan only spits out ice-cold words. Every single syllable drains his remaining life as he tells Susu to stop being such a clingy, annoying burden. Absolutely brutal, cold, heartless, and completely empty of warmth. He hits the button and the car window glass slowly starts rolling up. Susu lets out a devastating shriek, desperately trying to shove his hands through the closing gap. He screams for Ping Fan not to leave and to pick up the tie. He begs not to be abandoned, but the glass mercilessly rolls up and traps his fingers. Hearing him, Ping Fan immediately releases the button as his own heart practically stops. "Drive!" he screams at the chauffeur. The driver instantly slams his foot on the gas. The tires spin wildly against the thick snow, letting out a screeching metallic wail. The car surges forward, and the sudden force violently throws Bai Susu off balance. His fingers slip from the window gap, sending him crashing heavily into the muddy, slushy street. Ping Fan collapses back into his seat, gasping for air as fresh blood spills from his lips. It drips right onto the organ donation agreement in his hands while the blizzard howls outside. He can't hear Susu's cries anymore. The silence is absolute. This angst is honestly off the charts. Darkness rushes in like a massive tide, completely swallowing his consciousness in a second. The car is dead silent now, save for the hum of the defroster blowing warm air. He curls up in the back seat, clutching his stomach with both hands in sheer agony.
The ring he swallowed is sliding down his esophagus with every brutal bump of the car, tearing through his trachea, piercing straight into his stomach wall. His nerves are going numb from the agony. All he can feel now is a warm sensation. Hot blood is filling his abdominal cavity. From the front seat, the driver coldly asks if he can survive the trip.
The driver's voice is completely businesslike and devoid of any human empathy.
He warns that the boss needs fresh organs, and if Ping Fan dies on the way, the price drops. The payout gets cut in half. Hearing this, Ping Fan just forces a weak, tragic smirk. It is a pathetic smile, with blood fully coating his chin. "I will not die," Ping Fan gasps, clutching the contract. "The money is already in the Bai family account. If their boss dares to back out of the deal, he will haunt him forever." The driver sneers and tells him not to worry, because the black market has its rules. Nobody is crazy enough to steal money paid for with a life. Ping Fan stops speaking, resting his head against the freezing glass. He just lets his life force slowly slip away as old memories begin to flood his mind. 3 years of hell flash before him. Loan sharks, clubs crushing his ribs, his broken dreams, and rats gnawing away in a dark basement. The rustling sound of moldy bread in the dark, and a doctor's heavy sigh announcing his terminal illness. And then seeing Bai Susu in a wedding dress standing next to another man.
She is getting married next month to a paralyzed, abusive maniac. This is low-key heartbreaking, guys.
But it's fine. Now that the 50 million arrived, her family's company is saved. She doesn't have to marry for money anymore. She can stay the high and mighty heiress. Find a proper, healthy husband who actually matches her status. Live a peaceful life and have kids while he is remembered as a greedy, cold-blooded scumbag. A heartless gambler who literally sold his own life for cash. Honestly, he's totally fine with that. Lin Fan weakly raises his hand. He tries to wipe away the fluid on his face, blood or tears, he can't even tell. Eventually, the car stops. Someone yanks the door open. They roughly drag him out, and the freezing wind hits his face. The air is heavy with the sharp smell of formalin and harsh disinfectant. They throw him onto a freezing steel gurney, the wheels screeching across concrete. The doctors shout that his heart rate is dropping fast. Blood pressure is bottoming out. They need to inject stimulants to save his organs. Footsteps echo everywhere amidst the cold, clinical commands of the medical staff. Someone rips open his heavily blood-soaked coat. Cold scissors slice his sweater, exposing his bare chest to the freezing air. But wait. With his absolute last bit of strength, he grabs the doctor's wrist. Feeling the cold rubber glove, he whispers to call their boss over. His voice is barely a whisper, yet it carries a terrifying, absolute authority. The room falls dead silent. A moment later, steady footsteps approach, and a voice asks if Lin Fan has any last words. It's the black market boss. Lin Fan slowly lets go of his grip. He fumbles around to take off his worn-out, battered old watch. The screen is cracked. It's the only keepsake his mother left him. Other than the ring he swallowed, this is all he has. He holds it out. He begs for one last favor, but the boss coldly reminds him, "Your life belongs to me now. You don't get to make demands." Lin Fan whispers that this watch holds evidence against the Bai family's biggest rival. He gasps for air as blood pours from his mouth. This is actually crazy. Money laundering, assault, enough dirt to lock that scumbag up for life. The doctors gasp in shock. Lin Fan just smiles a bloody smile. For 3 years, he lived like a literal rat in the sewers. Just to get that 50 million, he dug up every single dark secret. That guy is a complete psychopath. No shot he let Susu marry him. A complete lunatic. Take this watch. Put it with the marriage annulment agreement in a black package.
Deliver it right to Bai Susu's desk at the corporation.
The boss stays silent so long that it seems like a rejection. But then a gloved hand reaches down and takes the watch. He agrees. With that, Lin Fan finally lets go. He's done it. After 3 years of constant, agonizing tension, his fragile mind finally snaps. He closes his eyes, lying flat on the freezing operating table, ready for the end. The blinding surgical light pierces through his thin eyelids, leaving a harsh, bloody red.
Cold anesthesia floods his veins as his consciousness slowly begins to fade away. The faint sound of a sharp scalpel slicing skin echoes softly in his ears. It doesn't hurt anymore. Not at all. Susu, it is snowing now, so please remember to wear warm clothes.
Do not let your hands freeze, and please do not cry for me anymore as I finally sink into eternal sleep. He will not see the Bai group 3 days later, or how their crisis is completely resolved. He won't see the news of the canceled marriage, and most of all, he won't see her. On Bai Susu's massive executive desk, a mysterious black package suddenly arrives with absolutely no sender details. Meanwhile, his consciousness floats up, feeling completely light and weightless. He escapes that broken body covered in needle marks and surgical scars, completely free from the agonizing pain. No more choking smell of blood. He just hovers there silently in the air. Shockingly, his vision becomes clear again, and honestly, this next part is just low-key heartbreaking. He decides to follow that mysterious black package as it is delivered. Floating all the way up to the top floor of the Bai group, he watches the secretary step in. She places the box right in the center of the mahogany desk, just as the door opens. Bai Susu walks in, clicking in her high heels, looking incredibly sharp in her black business suit. There are dark circles under her eyes from exhausting work, but her face now shows pure, unburdened relief. The rival heir is jailed, and that forced marriage agreement is officially thrown out. The company's funding is miraculously secured, and she has finally won this massive battle. She is now the undisputed queen of the Bai family, while he floats silently above her. He just watches her quietly, whispering a gentle congratulations to his Susu. Bai Susu walks to her desk and casually tosses her expensive Hermes bag onto the couch. Her eyes land on that mysterious black package. Who sent this? She asks. She asks without looking up, and the secretary answers that it was a local delivery.
Specifically addressed to you, Miss Bai, the secretary adds very respectfully.
Understood. You can leave now, she says, and the door quietly shuts. Now it is just the two of them in the room. Bai Susu grabs a utility knife. She casually slices through the thick black tape and opens up the cardboard box. Resting right on top of the box is a neatly bound, mysterious document. She pulls it out, casting a careless glance over the cover page. The next second, her eyes widen in absolute horror, and trust me, this twist hits so hard. Her breath completely catches as she looks at the file. Bold, dark letters are stamped across the cover. Final confirmation of body and organ sale. The utility knife slips from her hand, clattering heavily onto the hardwood floor. With trembling hands, she flips open the first page, black ink on white paper. It states everything clearly. Donor, Lin Fan, and the transaction amount is 50 million yuan. Organs to be harvested, both of his corneas and both of his kidneys. His liver, his heart, and all usable organs. Procedure date, 3 days ago. She stares at that date, 3 days ago, the exact day she chased his car through the snow. The day she saw him cough up blood all over the car window. This is a lie, she screams. She stumbles backward, her high heel twisting sharply underneath her. Falling back into her office chair, she yells out, "Lin Fan, what kind of sick joke is this?" She screams into the completely empty room, but her voice is shaking uncontrollably now. Susu thinks a fake contract will earn his forgiveness, but the ghost of Lin Fan is literally floating right in front of him. Lin Fan watches the pale face of Susu and the absolute terror he is desperately trying to hide. Susu is totally lying to himself. He knows the truth. His hands are shaking like crazy as he tears back into that cardboard box like a madman. He is literally ripping out handfuls of protective foam packaging from inside the box. Foam flies everywhere. A cold box is revealed. A square black wooden urn is left sitting there, completely blank with no photo on it. Just 2 words carved in gold. Lin Fan. Susu lets out a sharp, strangled scream. He pulls his hand back like he is shocked and covers his mouth. Tears spill. This cannot be real. Desperately shaking his head, hair sticking to his face, he screams for Lin Fan to come out. "Get out!" He throws a cup against the wall. As porcelain shatters everywhere, he yells about how a cheap wooden box cannot fool him. He cries out in denial, "No way!" Yet his hands move on their own, reaching out until his fingertips finally touch that freezing wood.
In an instant, all his strength vanishes and his knees buckle completely.
He drops heavily to his knees in front of the desk, clutching the urn tight to his chest.
"Please speak to me, Lin Fan." He presses his face against the freezing wood.
He sobbed. Was not Lin Fan supposed to go abroad and live happily?
Did he not find him disgusting? Get up and yell!
But wait, there is one more thing left at the very bottom of the box. A black voice recorder.
The hospital sent it with the ashes, just as Lin Fan requested. Susu spots the device and reaches out with a shaking hand to press play. After a soft hiss of static, the weak, gentle voice of Lin Fan begins to fill the room.
Lin Fan whispers his name, making Susu snap his head up.
Staring blankly at the recorder, his tears start crashing down onto the back of his hands.
The recording starts with Lin Fan saying that by the time Susu hears this, he is already gone. His voice keeps pausing, gasping for air. Between heavy, painful gasps, Lin Fan tells him not to cry and just listen to the end. Susu bites down on his lower lip. It bleeds. 3 years ago, the family business of Susu went bankrupt and his father suffered a massive heart attack from the stress. His dad begged Lin Fan to save the company and save Susu, so Lin Fan borrowed $2 million from loan sharks. Lin Fan chuckles bitterly, explaining how those loan sharks work. If you cannot pay, you pay with your life. They used steel pipes and broke 3 of his ribs. It really hurt. Susu shakes violently. He squeezes the urn so hard his nails scrape against the wood, making a harsh scratching noise. Lin Fan could not let Susu live in constant debt and fear. So he took some money, played the villain to force a breakup, and says he is so sorry. Every single awful thing he said that day was a lie, because he never stopped loving him. Susu lets out a devastating cry. "Stop talking!" He covers his ears to shut out the voice of Lin Fan, but the words keep breaking through. Then came the diagnosis, late-stage cancer. Doctors gave him until winter, so he spent his final days hiding in a freezing, unheated apartment. Just sitting there in the dark watching Susu succeed and look amazing on television? Watching his boy become a powerful CEO made Lin Fan so incredibly proud. The recording plays on, his breathing getting heavier, cut off by these painful, violent coughs. But the Bai Corporation fell into a massive $50 million debt crisis. You had to enter an arranged marriage, forced to wed that absolute lunatic. How could I watch you jump into a literal fire pit? His shaky voice asks. If they tear my broken body apart, it is worth exactly $50 million. Pretty good deal, right? Bai Susu suddenly grabs the recorder, crying that he is a lunatic. "Lin Fan, you are an absolute madman!" she shrieks at the device. Tears completely cover her face as she screams, "Who asked you to interfere? Who told you to risk your life?" But his voice just keeps playing. It sounds as gentle as a soft breeze talking about that day in the office. "I swallowed that ring," he says, "not because I thought it was dirty. It was because that was the only thing in my life I wanted to keep. The cleanest thing ever because it had touched your hand. It deserved to stay inside my body forever." And hearing this, Bai Susu completely breaks down. She collapses onto the messy floor, clutching his cold urn tightly to her chest. Broken, heavy sobs escape her throat as she cries, "Lin Fan, you gave me your entire heart." How am I supposed to live now? The recording finally nears its end. Only a faint, weak breath remains as he whispers, "Susu, the snow outside is so heavy. Make sure you eat on time and stop staying up so late. My body was too broken in this life. I was never good enough for you." In our next life, his voice grows fainter and fainter, fading into absolute silence. "In our next life, I will love you with a clean and healthy body." The recording stops, and the office falls into a heavy, dead silence. Talk about a devastating emotional payoff. Only the sound of Bai Susu crying her heart out, answering his voice over and over. She holds the urn close, burying her face deep against it. Her tears splash onto the cold wooden box, leaving a dark, wet stain. But she can never bring back that loving soul. Meanwhile, the ghost of Lin Fan is floating in midair. He reaches out to touch her hair, but his spectral fingers pass right through her. "Susu, do not cry anymore," he whispers. "I do not hurt anymore."
Suddenly, Bai Susu looks up, her eyes completely bloodshot. Like a wild, frantic beast, she mutters, "No, you are lying to me!"
She suddenly pushes the urn aside and lunges toward that cardboard box.
"You must still be alive," she says. "You are way too smart for this." "How could you die?" She frantically tears at the inside of the cardboard box, ripping the cardboard to shreds, desperately searching for any proof that Lin Fan is still alive.
"Come out! Please come out!" Paper scraps fly everywhere. And right at that moment, a piece of yellow drawing paper slips out from a hidden layer of the box. It drifts down gently, landing right at the feet of Bai Susu, making her freeze.
She slowly reaches down and picks it up, realizing it was from 3 years ago.
A rough sketch of a wedding dress she had randomly drawn in her sketchbook.
The lines were incredibly childish, and the design was quite unrefined. She had thrown it into the trash long ago, but Lin Fan secretly retrieved it. Honestly, this plot twist is so heartbreaking. He smoothed out the creases, keeping it hidden for 3 years. Shaking, she flips it over. On the back of the paper, a line of crooked ink handwriting is visible.
The letters are incredibly messy from trembling, written by Lin Fan on an agonizing, sleepless night.
He wrote down every single stroke once Susu becomes the Bai family queen. "I will marry her." Bai Susu just stares at those words, completely frozen. The last bit of light in her eyes completely dies out as she suddenly looks up. She lets out this absolutely gut-wrenching scream, with blood starting to drip down her mouth.
She clutches the drawing paper to her chest, curling up on the floor in pure agony. Shaking uncontrollably, she begs out loud, "Lin Fan, please just take me away."
"Please take me away," she cries, until she faints. Meanwhile, Lin Fan's soul floats helplessly above. Watching her lying there in a pool of blood, his ghostly form starts fading away. Time loses all meaning. This freezing room is just completely lifeless. Fast forward 10 years later, and trust me, the author really cooked with this time skip. The exact land where Lin Fan literally sold his own life is no longer covered in wild weeds and ruins. Instead of abandoned factories, the city's absolute largest private sanatorium stands in its place. It spans hundreds of acres, completely surrounded by beautiful evergreen cedar trees. Warm sunlight filters through the trees, shining down on the clean white marble buildings. And yeah, Lin Fan is still drifting right here. 10 years later, his soul hasn't faded. He has watched Bai Susu cut her hair short, slowly turning cold and hardened to the world. Ruthless. Cold. He watched her push the entire Bai group. She pushed the company to unreachable heights, but she chose to stay single for life. And on her ring finger, she always wears that simple silver ring she had remade. Today is the grand opening of the sanatorium, and the place is absolutely packed with reporters and giant cameras. They are all crowding outside the gates as Bai Susu steps out wearing a sharp black business suit. Standing right in the middle of the red carpet, her face is still flawless. But honestly, her eyes are just completely lifeless now, like a pool of dead water. A reporter calls out, "President Bai, why isn't this $10 billion sanatorium named after the Bai family?" The reporter thrusts a microphone forward, but Bai Susu does not even spare him a look. Instead, she looks up, her eyes scanning right past the massive crowd. She stares directly at the massive gold-plated plaque hanging right above the main entrance. The plaque gleams in the sunlight, with 3 words carved on it, "Fan Su Yu." Bai Susu just stares. Then she slowly raises her hand. She gently touches the silver ring on her finger. When she speaks, her voice is calm. But it carries a heavy, heartbreaking weariness. "My beloved." He was too tired, so she wanted to build him a home. A place where he would never feel pain. Camera flashes go wild. Everyone who knows the truth gets completely teary-eyed while Lin Fan's ghost floats above. He looks down at her straight back as sunlight pierces right through his transparent soul. "Susu," he whispers, "I can see our home. It is so beautiful," as a breeze rustles the cedar branches. The soft rustling sounds just like the sweet, gentle secrets he used to whisper in her ear. Once Susu becomes the queen, he will marry her. But sadly, even though the queen was crowned, her loyal knight was left behind forever in that freezing, snowy winter night. He can never return. 10 years, that is 3,650 days.
His soul has been completely trapped in this Fan Su Sanatorium in the south of the city, unable to leave. Back then, he took his very last breath right by this ocean. Ruthless people harvested his organs, and they burned whatever was left of his body into cold white ashes.
Susu went completely insane, using every bit of the Bai family's power to find him.
She tore down that entire underground black market, but she could never find his complete body. Only a wooden box of ashes remained, so she bought this plot of land south of the city.
Bulldozed the abandoned factories and built the largest private sanatorium in the entire city, offering free care to terminal, lonely patients. Honestly, seeing her work like an untiring machine is low-key heartbreaking. Tireless, by day, she rules the business world. She pushed the Bai Group to a $100 billion peak, but at night, she sheds all her spiritual power. Slipping into a simple white dress, she sits on the roof night after night. Tonight, heavy snow falls as the wild wind whips blood-red frost against the glass. It slams hard against the glass dome of the greenhouse garden, making quiet, fragile sounds. She pushes open the glass door, letting the icy wind and snow pour inside. Bai Susu sits right by a wheelchair, her long hair tied up casually with a wooden hairpin. Completely makeup-free, she keeps her head low, rubbing a silver ring over and over, the very one he swallowed in agony. It tore his throat, only to be recovered from his ashes, now heavily pitted by stomach acid. Despite the ugly solder marks from repairs, she treasures this ring more than her own life. Footsteps click across the wooden floor as her secretary approaches with a thick cashmere shawl. She walks over and wraps it tightly around Bai Susu's frail shoulders. "President Bai, it is getting late," the secretary whispers, her voice filled with deep worry.
The snow is falling heavier now, and her tone is completely heartbreaking to hear.
With freezing temperatures outside, she begs her to go inside. Bai Susu just shakes her head, her fingers never letting go of that ring. 10 years since he left. Her voice is incredibly faint, as if she is afraid to disturb the silent air. Wanting only to watch the snow with him, her secretary tears up. Though the secretary hesitates, Bai Susu softly interrupts, saying she is fine. Her hand gently points to the empty wheelchair beside her. Brewing 2 cups of hot tea, remembering his weak stomach. Since he hated the cold, the secretary has to look away. Biting her lip, she wipes her tears and quickly leaves. Floating down, his ghost silently sits in that empty wheelchair. Watching her after 10 whole years, fine lines creasing her eyes. Strands of silver are now scattered through her once beautiful jet black hair. She never married, and she never even went on a single date. Avoiding every social event, she only focused on her work. Her only solace was staying inside the sanatorium. Gently, Bai Susu turns her head. Looking directly toward his spirit, she whispers to the empty chair. Her eyes are incredibly soft as she mentions that today was quite busy. The facility admitted 12 more terminal stomach cancer patients, and she provided them with help. Buying the best imported painkillers with 0 side effects. They will never have to suffer like he did, staying awake from agonizing pain. Back then, he had to bite his tie just to survive the night. His spirit tries to smooth her furrowed brow, but his fingers just slip through her. Unable to touch her, he cannot even wipe away a tear. Whispering her name to the empty room, his soul aches. Begging her to stop torturing herself, but she cannot hear. Gently leaning down, she rests her face against the cold leather. An 18-year-old girl was just like him, blinded for 3 days by a tumor. She hired Germany's absolute best surgical team to perform her craniotomy yesterday. Surgery succeeded. Her sight was saved. Susu looks at the wheelchair, saying the girl woke up this morning. She held my hand, calling me a savior. But then, Susu smiles bitterly. Tears crash down without warning. Look, Fan, look at how many people I've saved. She traded every single penny she made just to buy back others' lives, begging the heavens to finally show mercy and return him. Her tears roll down, splashing right onto the empty wheelchair's cushion, leaving a dark, wet stain. Lin Fan's ghost silently watches her weep. He longs to hold her close and whisper that he is still right here. But he can't. He kneels, wrapping his spectral arms around her fragile shoulders. whispering that he didn't even leave a proper goodbye, begging Susu to forget him.
But Susu just closes her eyes, softly murmuring,
Praying for just one more look at him right as the glass door slides open. Her secretary walks in carrying a tray with 2 cups of hot tea. He sets them down on a small table but hesitates to leave. The man is tightly gripping an official document carrying a notary's steel seal. His veins bulge and his knuckles turn pale white from squeezing it so hard. Addressing her as President Bai, his voice trembles with a heavy, choked-up sob. Shaking the quiet room, he explains the legal department just sent this over, asking if she really won't reconsider, while Susu barely glances at the paper.
She's eerily calm. What is there to consider? I already signed it.
Notarization is done, but the secretary suddenly shouts, crying out that she is only 38 yet giving up all her company shares. Donating all cash and properties to charity? Why must she be this extreme with her death? Lin Fan's ghost floats nearby, following the secretary's trembling hand.
His eyes land on the paper, will and final authorization for Ash's disposal.
The moment he reads the terms, his spectral soul violently trembles in pure agony.
It's low-key heartbreaking as he reads her words. I, Bai Susu.
No tombstone, no funeral service. Her ashes must be mixed completely with Lin Fan's remains, combined as one forever. To be scattered into the southern sea together forever. Never to be parted again. Nah, this is actually insane. He screams in pure shock, frantically waving his ghostly arms. Trying to knock the paper away, yelling that she's a prestigious heiress. She deserves a grand burial in her ancestral grave, not joining an organ-selling scumbag. He rages, asking if she knows how filthy that dark black market is. But she can't hear a single word of his desperate screaming.
Susu calmly picks up her hot tea, gently blowing away the steam.
She calls her secretary Zhao, staring out at the fierce blizzard beyond the glass dome, whispering that 10 years ago the snow was even heavier than today. He was blind and alone, his mouth covered in blood. Stumbling toward that black market medical van, how freezing it must have been for him. The secretary covers his mouth, completely sobbing. He fell to his knees on the cold ground. He literally gave his eyes to someone else. That his heart, trading his very life just to get some money.
To bail out the failing Bai Corporation. Hearing this, Bai Susu lowers her gaze.
Staring at the tea rippling in her cup, seeing her own hollow, withered reflection. He died completely alone on that pitch-black beach with no one to even bury him. They literally tore his body apart, leaving him in too much pain to even scream. How can I let him keep waiting all alone? Bai Susu's secretary kneels right by her wheelchair, weeping.
Crying so hard she can barely breathe, begging her to stop talking.
She begs her to stop, but Bai Susu just quietly sets her teacup down. Gently stroking her secretary's hair, she tells her to go and close the door tight. Don't let the wind in! He hates the cold! The secretary stumbles to her feet, wiping away her tears as she backs out. Soon the glass doors slide shut, blocking out all sound, leaving nothing but her wheelchair alone in the quiet greenhouse. Outside the glass dome, the snow falls heavier and heavier as the violent wind whips up massive sheets of white, slamming them relentlessly against the glass as if trying to shatter this incredibly fragile barrier completely. Leaning back weakly in her wheelchair, Bai Susu's shallow breathing gradually starts to fade.
She is just so tired. She completely burned through her life force over these 10 years.
Working day and night without rest, endlessly torturing herself just to cope. All of it was just to build this fortress of atonement, hoping to feel a tiny bit closer to him. She whispers his name, Lin Fan, her voice so soft it could drift away on the breeze. That is when Lin Fan's spirit floats down, dropping to one knee before her.
Gazing at her pale, almost transparent face, he watches her slowly open her eyes.
Her dull and completely lifeless eyes suddenly spark with a strange, incredibly beautiful light. Her gaze pierces right through the void, locking directly onto his face. In this final moment of terminal lucidity, she is finally able to cross the boundary of life and death. Finally seeing that handsome young man standing there in his high-neck sweater with those fading bruises still on his neck. Standing right there in the raging blizzard, he gently reaches his hand out to her, palm open, exactly like he did 10 years ago.
It is what he has dreamed of doing countless times. He looks at her, calling her Susu.
His eyes stinging, but his voice incredibly gentle as he says, "Look, it's snowing."
Let's go home. At that, Bai Susu smiles, and honestly, this emotional payoff is so beautiful. A genuinely peaceful, beautiful smile blossoms across her face for the first time in 10 years.
All her defenses, her masks, and her immense pain completely vanish.
Making her look like a kid who finally got her candy, but she doesn't grab his hand.
Instead, she gently rests her head against the armrest of the wheelchair, finding her most comfortable position. Slowly closing her eyes as a peaceful, satisfied smile gently curls on her lips. In the freezing wind, she whispers her very last words.
That wedding you still owe me, I am finally coming to claim it now.